You're not Jonathan. Who
No,
are
I'm
you?
not. Sorry.
You're not Jonathan. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to GPS Live for the week of March 3rd, 2023. If you're joining us live, thank you so much. You can go ahead and leave comments on whichever broadcast you are viewing on. We'll be able to see those, and that way we can get you guys involved in the conversation. If you're watching this on demand, thank you so much for giving us some of your time. My name is Tristan Morris, and I am joined today not by our usual co-host, Jonathan Singer. He had to step out, but we have a fantastic guest who's been on before, Patrick McNeil. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much for having me, Tristan, and it's good to be on here with you today. I think, the last time I was on with Jonathan, so looking forward to the conversation with you now.
Yeah, we get to figure out if we can be good friends or if we're going to become mortal enemies for all time.
I doubt that. Come on.
How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing really well. Looking forward to the weekend, and we've got a big engineering breakout for my region coming up early next week. So looking forward to getting together with the extended team. Nice.
I'll apologize in advance if there's any excess noise coming from my video today. I have a dog who just had some ACL repair surgery a couple days ago, so we've been locked in the office for the last couple of days. So all my windows are open because it is a hot box in here. But she's starting to recover, and she's starting to kind of hop around on her own. So if you see me a little distracted, that's why. But we have some really great stories, I think, lined up this week. We've been
some biggies this week. Yeah.
We've been talking, Patrick, I don't know if you've caught the last couple of streams, but something Jonathan and I have been trying to do is at least like end on a high note for some of these and try and find like some positive stories. Mm-hmm. There's some really good positive stories this week,
right?
For stuff that come out. But before we can get into any of that, what we need to do is very quickly let everyone know that our opinions are our own. We do not represent the official opinions of GuidePoint Security. We're just two guys talking about things that we find interesting. But if you find what we say compelling, please let us know. But it is not a GuidePoint's official stance, the stuff that we're saying off the cuff here. So with that, you ready to dive in?
I was going to say, or tell me I'm wrong and tell me why, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If we get something wrong, I think that actually came up last week. Jonathan and I were in the middle of discussion, and someone was like, "Hey, have you thought about this thing?" And we were like, "Actually, that's a very good point."
No. Love it.
So perfect reason to engage. So with that, let's jump into our first story here. This is actually kind of, we have a couple stories that are revisiting things that we've talked about in the past and a couple things that are brand new. So we'll start with our first one here. LastPass has confirmed the cause of the 2022 data, or the couple of data breaches that occurred in 2022 on their systems. Now you had some early thoughts about this one. In fact, I think you were the one who dropped this in the chat for us.
Yeah, I feel like maybe we're poking them in the eye again, but really not. I found that the story was kind of positive and confirmed some things that we've been thinking about. The high note here, of course, is that they continue to share information when maybe they wouldn't really have to. So, provides a little bit of confidence to me that they have that sort of integrity. Mm-hmm. And it really confirmed a lot of what we've been seeing with, adversaries targeting developers and especially senior developers as a way in.
Yeah. So for anyone who may not be fully up to date on this, there was I think it was last December, end of the year, really close to the end of the year. LastPass came public and said, hey, there's been a breach on our systems, some data has been compromised, and particularly some of the vaults of our customers. So the password vaults themselves had been compromised. But that was not the only incident. There were a couple of incidents over the course of the year. There was an earlier one, and then that led to the later one, I believe, is the flow of things. But what they've come out now and revealed is that between August and October, there was some active reconnaissance and exfiltration activities happening in their environment. And specifically what they've tagged this to is one of 4 DevOps engineers who had access to the decryption keys that were needed to steal this data that they had out of I think out of one of their S3 buckets.
Mhm.
And what they tagged that to is that this developer, his personal at-home computer was compromised by the attacker, who installed a keylogger and then intercepted that developer's master password for LastPass as he was in the process of logging in and after his multi-factor authentication had already gone through. And so they were able to grab that and then gain access to what they needed. And that's really, I think, what we wanted to focus on with this, Patrick, is not so much we don't want to kick LastPass while they're down here. This is just a really great conversation starter around how to build security policy in your environment and the things that you need to be thinking about as an organization, especially if you're working in this. So,
right, and maybe even OSINT and all that too, because we don't know, how his machine was actually compromised. Was it some sort of drive-by or phishing email to maybe a personal account that they were able to find online somehow? Doing basic OSINT. And I mean, we don't really know exactly which media package was compromised and whether or not he was accessing a real work resource or not, or if he was using one password vault for work and home resources. So they just got the master password that way. But I mean, it really does underscore keeping the personal and the work stuff separate, right? Like using a completely different password vault, maybe even a different client altogether, using separate physical hardware and not accessing personal stuff from work and work from personal.
Exactly. If you're going out and looking for anything on this story, right, you might see some stuff being thrown around about specifically Plex Media Platform being the cause of this, and it's really worth noting here that that the Plex has come out and said, like, hey, we are not aware of any vulnerability that would allow this to occur within our system. I think it's really some rampant speculation, but there's nothing confirmed about that. So if you see that out there, don't immediately catch on fire and be like, we got to get rid of Plex everywhere if we have it in our homes. Right. There's no confirmation of that. So I wanted to mention that just to kind of get ahead of that, not necessarily misinformation or disinformation curve, but just the like unconfirmed. It
was a weak circumstantial tie. I mean, they mentioned that there was an advisory in the same time period in which the LastPass breach was made public. So,
if
it could have been old Winamp on his computer. You never know,
Yeah, exactly. If I made ties between every breach that occurred and advisories being released by software that I might use, I would probably have just a completely unusable computer. There would be nothing worth of value on it. But yeah, like you mentioned, this is just a strong reminder. Hey, if you're allowing employees to work from their own devices, make sure that you have very strong profile rules set up, that you have very strong controls over what is accessible from that device and what isn't. But especially, when it comes to something like LastPass or 1Password or any of the password management vault tools, right? Making sure that your employees know, hey, if you have a personal account with this already, you have to be segregating these things, right? Forcing as much as you can segregation, because the default on some of these tools is to say this person already has an account. Let's just take everything that they just got access to and add it to their account. And suddenly, their personal account has access to, all the passwords for your work stuff. It's super convenient, but you have to go through and manually say, hey, we want to separate these out. We don't want them. Even to the extent, I think the best policy would be to say, don't let them use a master password that they already have. They have to have a completely separate master password for those work things. So yeah, it's a good update to the story on the side that LastPass is coming out and continuing to update the public on what happened. They're certainly not required to do that, but it's also just a really great reminder of keeping things separate and practicing good security. But on that note, right? As far as like good guidance goes, and building secure software. Our next story today is the White House's new guidance on cybersecurity policy. So the Biden administration released new guidance from the White House. It's not law, obviously. It's just, hey, this is where we need to be pointed. And there is some really great stuff in there. And Patrick, again, you had some great thoughts, and you're our guest today. So I'd like to start it with you.
Yeah, I mean, I was really excited about this because it's been a long time coming to actually say, here's our direction, where we want to actually go. Obviously, it remains to be seen, how much of this gets implemented and how it gets implemented. But the fact that we've come out and said we need to have closer ties between private industry and the federal government, the government recognizes that our three-letter agencies may not be on the very cutting edge of all the threat intelligence, and there may be other things that they're fighting on a daily basis that the government doesn't know about. In that we actually need to have open information sharing is fantastic. I mean, just like all the complaints we've had for years about not having enough qualified candidates, and actually saying we're taking we're establishing a direction that we want to actually start training people to fill that pipeline with qualified candidates. Those for me were like the biggest things to celebrate.
Yeah. There's a lot of really good stuff in here from pushes towards responsibility for cybersecurity, right? Pushing away from individuals and onto secure organizations and secure software. Right. Obviously, there's always a root cause. Kind of, you can get down to like, well, this is the one employee who opened the email they shouldn't have opened, and that allowed this to happen. But then being able to point to it and say, well, they opened the email, but that's a human error. Why was that email able to have a thing in it that exploited this piece of software? The employee may have opened the email, but in the end, the vulnerability was in that software. And so pushing towards building secure tools and secure software from the get-go is really, really great, right? Thinking about AppSec and DevSecOps, and something there that Jonathan and I have talked about a lot recently, kind of like just the software bill of goods. What software is inside the software that you are using, and is it itself secure? That SBOM, those are all super important things to be thinking about.
Seeing as how I cover AppSec, I talk about that almost every day.
Yeah. yeah. It's and especially like I just finished up recording a video series, three short videos with one of our AppSec professionals, Tristan Bell, and she was talking about DevSecOps and the importance of pushing towards just, hey, developing from a secure mindset from the beginning, as opposed to saying, well, let's develop the thing and then figure out if it's secure afterwards.
Totally.
And what we need to fix.
Yeah.
We also got, from our from GRIT, the Guide Point Research and Intelligence team, we had some thoughts from them that I wanted to cover really quickly about this in particular. It echoes a lot of what we've said, but Drew Schmidt, the principal and lead analyst for GRIT, some of the things that he had to say about it is it's refreshing to see all of the strategic objectives dedicated to public and private relationships and intelligence sharing, since there's a really large gap in that area. Focusing on critical infrastructure, and this one is key. This is one that I forgot about. The long-term disruption of threat actors is spot on. Right, there's a huge push in here to move the government's operations away from these kind of point in time, this group is a problem, let's go deal with that, to continuous ongoing operations against malicious actors, to raise the bar that they have to cross, to bring that threshold higher that they have to cross just to be active, and try and make it so expensive that it's no longer worth using this as like a quick cash grab kind of avenue. And his thoughts are, oh, go ahead. Sorry, Patrick.
Sorry. No, I was interrupting you. I was going to say and the fact that they're willing to engage non-federal entities to assist with that. Yeah,
that's really huge. I mean, there is we're already suffering from that cybersecurity skills gap and the shortage of personnel who can get into this. Everyone in this industry feels that. But very specifically, like I worked on a program for a little bit with the Marine Corps. After I got out, I was trying to work with them and assist them in the fact that they know it's very hard to attract and retain people who have the right mindset for cybersecurity when the military is only going to pay you for those first 5-6 years of your career, pennies compared to what you could get actually operating within cybersecurity in the private sector. So they were asking, hey, how do we attract these people? How do we retain them? And that's out of that was born the idea of the civilian kind of cybersecurity corps, and bringing civilians in to fill those roles. What kind of benefits would they need to see? What kind of pay would they need to see? And so the idea of, hey, let's partner with these private organizations that are already capable of paying these people that much money. Let's bring them into the fold.
Yeah. You've probably seen it as well, that somebody will be in a cyber role in the military. They'll serve their time, they'll get out and turn around and do the same exact job for a private contractor.
Yeah. That's when I got out, I wasn't directly in cybersecurity, but I was a cryptologic linguist. And when I got out, the recruiter emails came hard and fast, like weeks after I got out. Hey, $400,000, $500,000 to go to Afghanistan for a year, and be a cryptologic linguist. And I was like, you know what, I'm fine, I'm good. I'm all right now. But they hit real hard to jump into those roles. And Drew's final closing thoughts on this is he wraps up. He says this is a very realistic and actionable strategic plan that could have a lot of positive impact on cybersecurity for the U.S. as a whole. And that's honestly that's what I see in here, from shifting responsibility towards building secure platforms to the kind of public-private partnerships they're talking about, and even to strongly calling out China and Russia as top threats to U.S. national security, taking that really hardline stance. Right, something we've all known for a long time, but to come out and say this is the problem, we need to go after it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really great. Love to see that. What was our next one? I forget what the next story we had.
We went down the rabbit hole on that one.
Yeah, I went down the rabbit hole. Oh, do you have a thought there?
No, I was going to say, was it the AI one, or was it?
Yep. Here it was. Speaking of government guidance and positive moves, CISA has released a new tool called Decider. This is really great. We talking and discussing the idea of public-private partnerships and bringing the experts in, but also getting everyone on the same page. MITRE attack, when it came out years ago, was really kind of a bombshell, right? To be able to say, hey, here is a taxonomy that we can all use as professionals. Getting away from what was used before? It was like the 7-step like kind of ladder tier that was just like, yeah, there's reconnaissance, and then there's infiltration, and then there's this, and then there's this. And it was like, well, that's great, but most attacks get up to step 4 and then loop back to step 2 and then continue back down. And so MITRE attack was this kind of bombshell within the industry of saying, like, we can actually track these things much more efficiently and much smarter. The only problem is then getting everyone on the same page about that taxonomy, right?
It's confusing at first. Yeah, you're just like, well, they did 3 different things, and I don't know which one to pick from. So, as you're learning about, I don't know about you, but when I first started learning about attack, I did find a number of resources on like YouTube talks and stuff, and quite a few of them were beyond the basics, like how to actually use the taxonomy and map to a specific, attack and sub-attack and all that. And like I watched hours of that to try to figure it all out. So having a tool that makes it easy, that's awesome. You don't have to be an expert, and you'll build expert knowledge as you look at attacks and go through it and see, oh, that's where it landed. So
and it's like you're saying, taxonomies are always super helpful. The ability to it narrows the kind of communication window between different professionals to be able to say, I am talking about this step, or I am talking about this type of thing, and we don't have to go through all of the explainers, but really honing in on how, how do we define what goes in that step? That's what this new tool is designed to do from CISA. So Decider is this tool that CISA has developed that walks through the attack mapping process and asks you questions as you're looking at an attack. It's like a guided kind of survey that says like, hey, what kind of adversary activity are you seeing? What have they done at these stages, to really help you narrow down to which tactics, techniques, procedures, sub techniques, what you're seeing falls into. To try and streamline that process, because I'm sure when we're talking about attacks, right, and trying to communicate, especially through something like the attack framework, the faster we can get through that process and say, here's where it sits, the better, because that's faster that we can get that information out there and communicate it to the rest of the cybersecurity world and sphere, start using the tools that we have to stop these things.
Yeah.
So that's why they developed it, was really to narrow down that focus.
For the AppSec audience, I will liken it to, it's the MITRE CWEs, but for the response side, instead of, finding security flaws up front. Yeah.
This is really great. I think, especially for a while in my career, part of my job was rebuilding like APT attacks, just using off the shelf tools if I could find them. So, working with the threat research team at the company that I was at, and they would tell me, here's everything that we know. And they would pass me stuff based on like, hey, here's, according to the framework, this step of the thing, this is what they're doing. And I would go say, okay, is there a PowerShell script I can use to do the same thing? Is there a remote access tool that I can grab off GitHub and set up to do the same thing? To be able to show people, hey, just because you hear about this group and they're tied to North Korea, or this group and they're tied to Russia, and they're attacking major financial institutions, and you're not a major financial institution, doesn't mean you don't have to be worried about the same exact style of attack coming after you, because any script kiddie can do this just by looking at Stack Exchange and GitHub. And being able to map that back to that attack framework was super useful, to be able to say, I just accomplished these 6 steps that are pretty far down the MITRE attack framework, pretty minute sub techniques that are on there. And I was able to do it by, tricking an end user into clicking a dialog prompt that I built with PowerShell to allow PowerShell to do something, right?
Cancel.
I always used to say, for doing presentations and everything, right, you always want to think about who you're, who's the person in the room who knows the least about the thing that you're talking about, and do your presentation for them. It's the same way that attackers build their attacks, right? Find your lowest common denominator of intelligence, go one step lower, and then send your phishing email out to that person will find the email and they will click it. So it's really great to see this. If you want to know more about it, you can go to CISA's blog. The blog's title, Helping Cyber Defenders Decide to Use MITRE Attack. So you can read up on that. They also have guides on how to use the questionnaire and everything, which gets into a little bit more. We can start building tools that help walk you through the tool to walk you through MITRE Attack.
Once you spin it up, it's easy.
Yeah, once you get it in there, you're good. But we have one final story as an update to something that Jonathan and I talked about a couple weeks ago. And this one is of interest. It's not one of those good news to end on stories. We already covered 2 good things with the White House.
Broke your rule already, man. But
guidance. Yeah. But this one is actually easy or interesting because of our own internal research with the Guide Point Research Intelligence team. A couple weeks ago, Jonathan and I covered the ransomware attack against Oakland, California, that brought down large chunks of their infrastructure, large chunks of the municipal operations. People were unable to, pay fines or, pay certain fees and things that they needed to have access to. Luckily, 911 wasn't touched, but it brought down a large chunk of the city's infrastructure. And just recently, the Play ransomware group has claimed responsibility for the Oakland attack. They have posted that on their victim posting site, and have claimed that they are going to release some data that they exfiltrated. If their demands are not met, as is typical for ransomware. But this is interesting because we just highlighted the Play ransomware group in one of our recent GuidePoint Research Intelligence Team ransomware reports. But you said you'd done a little bit of digging on this one, Patrick.
Yeah, I did see that there was a date mentioned. It said it was supposed to be yesterday in one of the stories, and I hunted around. I didn't find anything. There's no press reports. However, the screenshot that they posted actually says publication date 3/4. So
Tomorrow.
it may be tomorrow that it comes out if they follow through.
Yeah. If they follow through on that. It's also important to note that the city of Oakland has not mentioned any data exfiltration or anything in any of their public statements. So there's no real knowing until we start seeing things like manifests of what was exfiltrated and why am I suddenly, and hashes for that data and things like that to compare to. It's impossible to know if this is just kind of grandstanding on behalf of Play, or if they actually have something that is worth trying to make this play for. What was that?
I found it interesting too that like this group didn't even show up in the 2022 summary from Grit. Like they were not in the top 10. They were not anywhere. And now suddenly in the January report, they're like the 5th most active group out there, targeting mostly transportation and government and some utilities and stuff. So it's like they came out of nowhere and they have been very effective.
Yeah. And also I think we may have highlighted them in we highlighted them in our January 2023 report. So right after the annual report came out. So all of our reports are on a 1 month back basis. So we published this at the beginning of February, the report looking back across January. But they came out in January as the 5th most active ransomware group for the month. Like they really popped in. And let's see. Their leak site first became active to claim 36 victims in December. That's kind of like a huge surge. But there are notes that denote them active back as back as June of 2022, like you said. They predominantly were coming out against transportation as a sector, a vertical that they really went heavily afterwards. Government and manufacturing tied as their second most favorite industries. And they really target heavily the United States and the UK. This is in keeping with what Grit has seen from Play in the past, right? Claiming responsibility for attacks against a municipality, a government entity, and targeting things like their transportation network, like their ability to take fines and pay fees and things like that. Really trying to, it seems to me, go after the things that try and make it as cost prohibitive as possible for an organization to say, now we can get away with just not paying that ransom, right? It's the balance becomes, well, how many days do we have? Do we have 2 days? Do we have 3 days? Do we have 4 days before it becomes more expensive to not be collecting fees, to not be able to process payments? They've claimed responsibility for this one, and we will keep an eye on it, and probably might see it pop up next week as well if we have any updates for you.
Hopefully we don't.
Yeah, hopefully we don't. Hopefully we don't. Hopefully that is the update, is that we go, hey, nothing came of it. So that is the end of our stories for this week. Patrick, thank you so much for joining me on GPS Live this week.
Sure, thanks for having me, Tristan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And for all of our viewers for watching, thank you so much for giving us a half hour of your Friday around your lunchtime. We really appreciate that. We appreciate the engagement that we get from you guys. If you're watching this on demand, again, I'll say go ahead and leave your comments. We'll still see them. We would love to see you guys live next week at 10:30 Pacific, 1:30 Eastern. Until then, on behalf of GuidePoint Security, will continue to be Tristan Morris.
And I'm Patrick McNeil. Have a good one.
There we go. Like a well-oiled machine, Patrick. We've got this down. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We will see you next time.